Welcome to our podcast where we are reading through the Bible in a year, and everything is focused on that Old Testament, New Testament. It all points to Jesus. And so today I have with me Chris Randall. Welcome, Chris.
Glad to be back.
So we are finishing up the Old Testament today.
Yeah.
So
crazy. Which many of you might be wondering, wait, I thought this is Chronicles. That's not the end of the New Testament. Why is it that we waited to do Chronicles? What was the point of that?
That was a question that kept getting asked. I think it was back in May as we were in the midst of it. And I kept getting that question, and I'm like, it's in there later. Yeah. Well, the reason we're doing Chronicles so much later is it is quite literally a summary of the entire Old Testament. So It's going from, in fact, the first word in Chronicles is Adam.
Yep.
So we start with Adam, and then we get this long list of people. And then what it ends with is actually in 2 Chronicles, the last words is a half of a sentence, but it's Cyrus's decree for the people to actually go back to Jerusalem. And that's where really the Old Testament kind of sits and ends, as the people are back in Jerusalem. And so that's where we step into it.
Yeah. How crazy is it that the book kind of ends in an incomplete sentence?
Yeah. So we'll get to that. Next, just a update for you as you're walking with us through this. Next week, we're going to have a week that's focused on the intertestamental period, which is Old Testament and New Testament. There's 400 years approximately between the last written in the Old Testament and when the New Testament begins. And so we're going to talk about what's happening in that middle space. Yeah. There's a lot of conquering of empires and things like that make a huge impact before we get to Jesus' story in the New Testament that gives us all this background. And so we're going to sit in that next week. Yeah,
that's great. Before we jump in, there's only so many things in life that we know to be true. That's that the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. Yep. And anytime Matt and I are together, we have to talk about Nebraska football. Have to talk about it just a little bit.
And unfortunately, we're coming off of a loss. This is the first loss of the season.
Humble pie.
So I wouldn't say we got it handed to us against Michigan.
We lost by 3 points.
And we left a lot of points on the table.
Sure, yep.
Where we could have won the game. So quick initial thoughts. What was your thoughts of Nebraska after our first loss?
Yeah, for me, it was a little bit of a reality check. Obviously, winning Cincinnati was great. Was just happy we won the game, even if it was a last-second win. We did what we were supposed to do against Akron and Houston Christian. Yep. But when you have those games, I don't know what to think yet. Yeah. Because I'm like, I just don't know. Because the talent's not matched up the same.
Who's not.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I was nervous about the Michigan game. Yeah. My head the entire week was telling me that Michigan would win. But, of course, my heart was saying that Nebraska would win. And my heart won when it came to my prediction time.
Which you can't pick
it's
the
so
other
hard.
way.
But I'm still optimistic about the season. I still think we can achieve what we hope to achieve this year. No one's thinking we're going to win a national championship this year.
Well, sorry. I am. I am. Hey, it's still possible. All you have to do is get into the college football playoffs.
You think we can make a run?
We can make a run. Absolutely.
But I feel like baseball, okay, I could see maybe a run. You can get hot. Or maybe basketball.
Yeah. Because these are young guys. Lots of young guys on the team. By week 7, they're going to be flying around. They're going to know their positions. I think a few new starters will appear. Yep. And it's going to be just incredible.
I would say, though, I think there's 2 teams left on the schedule that I wouldn't be surprised if we lose, and I wouldn't be as disappointed if we lose, and that's USC and Penn State.
Yeah. See, I don't
if we
think
lose to anyone else besides those 2, I'm going to be a little bit like, okay, we're really not as good as I was hoping we are.
A lot of people are picking us to lose to Minneapolis or Minnesota
just because it's a trap game, short week,
and they always have our number too.
So
I will be very disappointed if we lose to Minnesota, and I'll be very disappointed if we lose to USC. Because I'm not a Lincoln Riley fan, and I think their football team is soft.
We have to beat Iowa this year. Goodness.
I already chalked that one as a win.
That has to be a win.
That's going to happen.
Yeah. Too bad we're not playing Wisconsin again this year.
So my biggest worries, honestly, with the rest of the season is actually everybody else is down on the defensive line and the offensive line. Tackles did not play well, but coaches, we have to chip and help. We left a lot of empty backfield, and we didn't have a running back or a tight end chip the rushers, so they had free run. So I'm not super worried. I think he'll make those adjustments. And then I was more frustrated by our safety play and in particular our linebacker play, because I didn't feel like they were making their run fits very good, and they were always out of position, and our safeties kept coming down, and they would overplay or take the wrong angle, and every time that was happening was a house call.
Yep.
And 3 house calls makes a big difference in a game.
For sure. And if I heard this correctly, so don't quote me because I'm not 100% sure, besides those 3 big runs, they were averaging maybe like 2.7 yards a carry.
They were not doing well.
So it wasn't like they were like, they were getting 8 yards every time they were running the ball. We just had those 3 big, of course, home run hits that just killed us.
Which unfortunately still counts.
Yep, so. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I feel okay about the defensive line, honestly. I know everybody else seems to be down on them, but I'm okay with that. I think safeties and linebackers have to play better.
Yep.
So
for sure.
Make tackles. Make tackles.
Make the tackle.
Make tackles. So, well, that was our Nebraska discussion. So, I guess prediction.
Yeah.
What's your prediction?
Season prediction?
Yeah.
Right now I'm going to go 8-4.
8-4. So, whoa. That's 3 losses. USC, Penn State, Minnesota?
I think there's until I see something different. I'm just leaving room for one. Man, we should have won that game.
That was this last week.
That was this last week. Okay, so we already used that one?
Yeah.
I still think like there's a chance. We better not lose to Michigan State, but
no.
I mean, we just can't overlook them.
All right.
Minnesota is the only other one that's kind of like.
All right, I got us at 10-2 still.
10-2?
Yep.
Really?
Yep. Penn State's going to take it because we're playing at Penn State.
I'm hoping so.
But
my new strategy is to aim lower, so I'm not disappointed.
I always aim high.
Yeah.
Always.
So that way, if we do exceed, it's like, awesome. That was great.
I expect us to win every game by 30 to 40 points. So I'm not great at predictions. So, hey, Mark, what's your prediction now? 9-3. 9-3. So USC and Penn State? Okay. I'm telling you, we are beating USC this year. We're beating them. So mark it down. Check it down for everybody. Yeah. USC is losing to Nebraska by 14 or more points. There you go.
We play them in November, right? Yeah, like November 1st or something.
They don't like the cold. So
yeah, and it's supposed to be a blackout game. So hopefully it's a night game. Otherwise that'll look kind of
they are going down.
lame.
So all right, well, let's get into Chronicles. So we had mentioned already that Chronicles is the summary of the whole of everything in Scripture.
Yep.
What's unique, though, about Chronicles is it's really almost exclusively telling the story of the line of David. And so it's 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. It's like they took those 2 books and combined them together in 1st and 2nd Chronicles.
Yeah, Chronicles is like a theological reflection more than like a history book.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the stories are not news stories.
Yeah,
but
a lot of them are the same.
A lot of them are the same, and that's with an emphasis. And you can how the book starts with the genealogy, which I know is never
which
really
is
fun,
long,
which is very long.
Yeah.
The whole point of even starting with the genealogy was to show that like a summary of the Old Testament by highlighting key names. And so that was kind of already from the jump, you could say, okay, this is what they're trying to do here and accomplish throughout this book.
And in many ways, this fits really well where it's at right before we go into the New Testament, because right when we jump into the New Testament, we get genealogies as well of Jesus. And so when you reflect back on the Matthew and Luke and all the genealogies from the Gospels, we should be thinking of Chronicles as well, is that like, hey, this is almost a continuation of what the Chronicles was focused on but now we have the up to Jesus.
Yeah.
And showing that Jesus is in the line of David.
Right.
So, which is going to be a huge emphasis in Chronicles.
Yep. I think another thing, too, that whenever you're looking at genealogy is, like, what is something that you're supposed to take away from this besides just looking at these bunch of names? I think genealogies are sometimes a reminder for us readers that God is faithful to preserve his people. And as you're reading these names, just to be simply reminded of their story and God's faithfulness, and that God is faithful to his promises despite how much time has gone or has passed. He's still faithful to his people.
And how messed up some of these people were.
Yeah.
Because that's a consistent thing over and over again, is like you read some of these names and you're like, well, this person, like this was their sin, or this person, and they were doing this, idolatry, murder, some of them. Like you go through this list and it's just over and over again, like, okay, God's people were unfaithful, but consistently God was faithful.
Yep.
And that's the overarching theme throughout is, and he's going to use David's line to bring about, and this is kind of the core emphasis of Chronicles, of a king like David, a better David.
Yeah, which if you notice in Chronicles, as you kind of through chapters 10 and 29 of First Chronicles, it's a lot about David's rise in his kingdom. But if you notice, the negative stories of David are
Bathsheba's not
left
in there.
out. Yep, that's not
Uriah killing Uriah is not in there.
And so, like, why would they do that? Why would they leave that out intentionally? What is the purpose of that?
So this is interesting because I think as an outsider looking in, you're like, oh, well, they're whitewashing history, like trying to make David look good.
Yep.
But like the person that wrote this, sometimes referenced as the chronicler by modern people, modern scholars, historically they thought of Ezra or Nehemiah being the person that was writing this, and it was during their time that it was written. But the person writing Chronicles knows that everybody has access to this. So it's not like I'm whitewashing it. He's framing what the storyline is, though, because it's pointing to a king who is the ideal king in many ways for the people, who did follow after God's own heart, who was a worshiper, who loved God. You see that poured into the Psalms over and over again. You see that in his story in Goliath's story, like of the man who steps into the gap and says, you cannot mock my God like that, and steps up even though he shouldn't be in that battle. And yet he's giving this picture of an idyllic king, but saying in the line of David, but also in the context of David as well, of saying David was a great king, and the king that is to come, the Messiah, the anointed one, will be even greater.
Yeah. You may have heard before Jesus referred to as the greater David.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a lot of the point of Chronicles is that there's a king coming that's even greater than David, and that was pointing to Jesus in the New Testament.
And so it's not a whitewash of the history. It is a pointed, because you can always go back and read 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd
the authors,
Kings.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the authors were assuming you already knew the prior knowledge. This was I'm putting emphasis on this for a reason, not purposely leaving things out to create something else.
Because they would have all known 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. That was in their history. They knew the stories. There is some new stories, though, of David that this person that wrote it, the chronicler, will use as the language around it, got from some of the historical books and put into his own story. It excluded the adultery and the murder. It excluded his kids' issues, which were not good. Like there was he had a lot of kids that did a lot of bad things. But it was pointing to this picture again of a greater than David storyline, a new David, the future king. And it's giving us a very prophetic interpretation of Israel's history that us as readers, as we read it, points us to hope of a coming king.
So we see these stories of David. We then see also David involved with temple and worship preparation.
Yeah, those are new.
Yeah, those are some of the new material that you see. We see David gathers materials, organizes Levites, priests, musicians, and worship leaders. And I think the emphasis here is to kind of paint this picture that worship is central to Israel's life with God. You also get to see a little bit more, too, in 2nd Chronicles, just the pattern of the clear pattern that we've seen throughout this entire Old Testament, that
all the other kings,
if you are faithful to the Lord, you will prosper. But if you are unfaithful, you will not prosper. And so you see this highlighting of like the kings that did do this really, really well, like Josaphat and Josiah. And then you get this contrast of kings that did not do this well. And the whole point is to call us to like, oh, we should be faithful to the Lord and we'll prosper.
So another set of stories that gets hit on some in Samuel and Kings is David and his mighty men, but it goes into a little bit more depth on some of those, like this list of guys that comes, the mighty men of David that come and help him when he was running from Saul in those wilderness years, in essence, as he's building power, his building up his army. And it's interesting as you read those. One of the contexts that it reads into is it talked about this man was worth 1,000 other men. Yeah. And that's the kind of storyline that these mighty men have behind them, is that like these were warriors of great renown, and they were like this guy that he has coming into his mighty men army is worth 1,000 other warriors. Yeah. Like he's that good. And so there's this kind of buildup of some of that in this as well. Then we have this. So we talk about that King David side, but we also have this priesthood understanding, because he's building the temple. He's not actually the one that builds it. He's the one that takes the blueprints and provides it to Solomon, his son, who will build it. But there is this kind of picture of all of this happening behind the scenes as well.
Yep, and David kind of has some say in the proper manner in which the undertake is happening and the movement of the Ark of the Covenant as well. And you also still get to see some of David's Psalms in there too. Yeah. It's kind of mixed in there as well.
Highlighted.
Yep, which is cool.
So 2 Chronicles follows the other sets of kings that are in Judah, from Solomon to, and then ends up, basically, it ends with the line, let me pull it up. The last line, as we said before, is like a half of a sentence, and it just kind of ends there. But it's with Cyrus, the Persian emperor, basically releasing the people from Babylonian exile, now under Persian control, releasing the people to go back to Jerusalem. And this is what we read then in Ezra.
Yep.
Of Zerubbabel and it would have been Mordecai and others traveling back to rebuild the temple. And so this is the last line. It says, here, I'll read from 22. It says, now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, which is interesting language in itself, stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia. The Lord did this.
Yeah.
So that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and also put it in writing. Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdom of the earth, and he has charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whoever is among you, of all his people, may the Lord his God be with him. Let him go up. ...
Yeah. And it really leaves you off with this glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
This hope of restoration.
Yeah.
Like, you just reflected on all that has like really happened in the Old Testament, the highs and lows, mostly focusing on David and that there's a greater David coming. And now they're getting to the point where to build the temple. And there's just this sense of hope that you're getting here at the end of Chronicles.
And we've talked about this in the last few times with Ezra and Nehemiah, and into the pre-exile or post-exile prophets, that the hope was that the exile has corrected the people to have hearts for God again.
Yep.
And that they would follow, that they would be restored, and that they would worship, that idolatry would be wiped away, that the people would repent. And what happens is very much the same thing that happened in the wilderness back when the people were put into slavery as well.
Yeah.
Is they didn't It's kind of the overarching theme of like the hope. They failed, and we're left exactly where we were again before the exile.
Yeah.
A broken people and a broken covenant by the people.
Yep. Yeah, so when you look at this book as a whole, what should be our like biggest takeaway? What is something that we could take with us after reading these two books? Well, one book together, but split for us.
I think it's kind of the same as the entirety of the Old Testament, which is what it's doing, is summarizing the Old Testament, is that there is one that is to come.
Yep.
And everything in the Old Testament points to Jesus. Everything points to our need for Jesus. And they don't use Jesus by name yet, but everything is pointing to the one who is to come, this Messiah, the anointed one, the king that is greater than David.
Yep.
In the line of David, everything is pointing to what is to become this climatic.
Setting the stage.
Yeah, like there's this buildup. But then what we get to is 400 years of silence.
Yeah.
And then we sit in that.
Yep.
And that's where we're at now after Chronicles, is the silence. God doesn't seem to be talking.
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
We have nothing written during those 400 years.
Yeah. But
and a lot of turmoil.
Yeah. And not to spoil anything for next week, but even though we don't have anything in writing for those 400 years, God was still at work.
Yeah.
Still setting the stage.
God is always working behind the scenes.
Yep.
And that's kind of what's cool when we read that Cyrus thing, is like, this is somebody that is not a follower of God.
Yeah.
And yet God prompts him, and Cyrus even says that I have been prompted, I've been told that I am to create this temple. And so he sends people back to do it.
Yeah.
So, and you see that just so many times, like Nebuchadnezzar, like, who proclaims, and like, so there's this kind of just consistent theme of God works through people even that are not for him at times.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes the least expected. I mean, you look at the Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
Who was persecuting Christians and approving of the murder of Stephen.
Yeah.
And God meets him in the road to Damascus in a burning bush and changed history from there.
So anything else in Chronicles that we need to discuss?
Just know that Jesus is the greater David.
Greater David. So, yeah. So that is Chronicles. That is the Old Testament.
That is the Old Testament. Way to go.
Good job, everybody.
You made it through.
Made it through the Old Testament. We hope you've followed with us as best you could. Hope you're still reading along. Feel free to pop us questions about anything in the Old Testament. As I said, next week we're going to hit on the intertestamental 400 years before the New Testament. And then it gets a lot easier.
Yeah.
New Testament is a lot easier to talk
read,
about.
Easier to talk about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, we're not sitting so much in, like, we got to talk history,
right,
which is kind of what we have to do in the Old Testament, is give you framework to understand what it's talking about.
Because context is key.
In Matthew, when we start into that, like, you'll have a lot of already things set in motion for being able to have those conversations with us. So,
definitely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Great to be here.
Go Big Red. We'll talk more Husker football in the future. So, and let us know your predictions. Are we 10-2, 9-3? Mark
8-4.
8-4. So pessimistic. So pessimistic. 8-4. That doesn't sound good at all.
I know.
That will not get us in the college football playoffs.
It won't.
9-3, probably not. 10-2, we're knocking on that door
for sure.
So
10-2. If we don't get in at 10-2,
the Michigan loss, because they might jump us in that is the problem. So.
Sure. Unless they're already in it.
I doubt it. They got at least one more loss on there from Ohio State.
Yeah.
I don't know if they play Penn State, and I just see them losing another game. So.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us. Yeah. Join us next time for our intertestamental, our Testament, New Testament, Old Testament mix. So we'll talk to you next time. Have a good day.